Hello, thanks for joining me. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Jo Worsfold. I've got a Reiki healing business or energy healing business in Launceston. I'm a qualified Reiki master teacher, and I have a lot of sort of intuitive gifts as well that I incorporate into my healing sessions. One of my proudest accomplishments so far is writing this book, Equilibrium: Spirituality for Everyday People. So it took me about 2 years to write this. Hi, Em. Thanks for joining. So the reason, hi, Steph. I wrote this book because after doing healings for other people for a couple of years, I found people were asking me the same questions or very similar questions. And it was about people would ask me, what can I do to bring more happiness into my day? What can I do to feel healthier in my mind? What can I do to help myself? And lots of questions around energy and what it is and how it works. So I found myself repeating myself over and over, which was fine. Like, I could talk about this stuff all day, 1,000 times a day. But it got me thinking, if I put all this stuff down, if I put all the things I've learned in the last few years, if I put all this down in a book, and if I share my own story, my own journey, how I got started, then more people are going to be able to access this information, and hopefully it will help more people rather than just helping, the clients who were coming to see me. I wanted to help more people. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to put it all down on paper. And around the same time, I saw on social media an organisation in Hobart had put a call out for Tasmanian authors who, if you had unpublished work, for you to apply to be a part of an art project. It was a living library. And hi, Rose. Hi, Trace. So that got me thinking, well, I haven't actually got any work to submit, but this might be the push I need to get me, really committing to this book idea that I had. So I contacted them and I had to submit, I can't remember how many pages it was. It was like 40 or 50 pages, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head. So you had to submit a fair chunk of work to apply for one of the roles as an author in this living library. And I could not believe it when I got the reply from them saying, we love your work, we'd love for you to be a part of this project. So that was it. So I knuckled down and thought, right, well, this is my motivation. I'm going to get this thing written. So I wrote that, and that book was called A Soulful Journey. And I've actually got a copy of it here. Right, I'm going to run away for 2 seconds. I'll be back. Hi, Helen. I want to get a copy of A Soulful Journey and show you. So just 2 seconds. I'll be back. Okay. So here's A Soulful Journey. So this was the result of that art project that I was a part of. So my book was published as part of the Living Library. It was called the People's Library. And it's only thin. You can see there how thin it is. It wasn't very many chapters. How many chapters was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About 10 chapters. Very brief. But I was so proud of myself. I did it. I had something in print. I'd achieved my goal. And I loved this book, and I read it a couple of times after it was printed, and I thought, oh, God, there's so much more I want to say. I could expand on so many things of what I've kind of touched on in this. So this became this, Equilibrium. So the essence of Equilibrium is from A Soulful Journey. So the chapters from A Soulful Journey are in here, but there is so much more detail in this, and there's so many more Like there was no exercises or sort of self-help, you know, DIY stuff in this. This is full of it. So this is a bigger, better, expanded version. This A Soulful Journey just grew into this beautiful big book, and you can see this is a lot thicker. There's a lot more chapters. So it was published. I published it myself in November last year. I couldn't find anyone, any publishing houses or agents who were interested. So I thought, well, I'm going to do it myself. So I did. So it came into print in November last year, and this is my baby. I love this. And do you know what? I actually flick back through this book from time to time. I'll just pick it up and read a random chapter. And I'm still learning stuff from it, because a lot of this was channeled. A lot of the things I wrote in here, it was channeled through spirit. So I'd kind of forgotten a lot. So I still now will pick this up and just pick a chapter or an exercise and read through it and go, like this. I'm always still learning things from this book, and I wrote it. So I hope if you have a copy of this, keep it somewhere close, because I feel like people will be doing that as well. You refer back to it. There'll be little bits and pieces in here that may not resonate with you at the time, but a month down the track, they will. So, and that's kind of the idea of this, is it's a guide. It's a little buddy for you to help you on your spiritual journey. So today, what I want to talk about is chapter 1. Not chapter 1, part 1. So let me just flick through. So part 1 is my story. I wanted to include, hi Tori, I wanted to include my story in this book, and I did have a lot of people question that when I was sort of going through the rough drafts, saying, oh, is it relevant? We don't really think it's relevant, because I did have other people read over it in the working stages. And I thought to myself, well, yes, it is, because one, I want people to have a better idea of who I am, where I've come from, what I've done, my own experiences, because then that kind of gives you more familiarity with me, with the author. And I just felt like that would be really helpful. And I also feel like the lessons I learned in my own journey, which I've enclosed in the part 1, my story, I feel like those lessons can help be other people's lessons as well. You know, people have read some of the stories, my own personal stories in this, and they've contacted me and said, far out, you know, I never thought about it like that. Or people are saying, I've been through similar experiences. I can't believe there's someone else who's been through something like that. So I feel like part 1 is a really important part of the book, because it makes me a little bit more relatable, and it helps. So I'm just scrolling down through the comments. So if you've read part 1, which is the first 4 chapters of the book, and you've got any questions or you want any more information on anything, just pop it in the comments. I'll just try and keep a half an eye on the comments as we go. I'd really love for this to be interactive, but if not, if you're happy to sit here and just listen to me rattle on for a little bit, that's fine too. But please throw some questions at me, and I'll try. It was quite a while ago now, the early stage of my journey, so I'll try and remember bits as best I can. Hi Cassie, how you going? So I talk about in part 1, I do talk about my journal, the journaling that I did around that time. So I wanted to show you my journal, and I've got a couple of bits I've sort of noted that might help. So I literally went to the newsagents and bought a really cheap little notepad. So if you're not journaling and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by journaling, or it seems a bit scary, I think give it a go anyway, because I've had this journal now for years, 5, 6 years maybe. To start with, I wrote in it all the time, like every week, maybe even every few days. And then it dropped off, and I was writing in it maybe once every couple of months. And then there was like a massive chunk of a year or so where I didn't use this journal, but I kept it. It's been in my cupboard, and whenever I feel like I need to vent, or something really cool's happened that I want to write, so I've had a spiritual experience that I want to jot down, then I pull my journal out and I keep writing in it. So I'm still writing it. Like the latest entry I did was, what's the date? It was yesterday. but I haven't really got that far through it, look. So you can be as, you know, as committed to journaling and do it every day and write pages and pages and pages if that works for you. But if you just jot little bits and pieces down whenever you feel like it, honestly, that helps as well. Every little bit helps. So I highly recommend a journal if you don't already have one. So there was, oh, see, now I've lost my spot. I was going to share something with you. So I've had a couple of people ask me about when I started, when I first did my Reiki training, how was it for me? Because I guess most of you know me as I am now and the things I can do now. But when I first did my training, it was very stop and start. Sometimes I'd feel things, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd have a fleeting glimpse of this amazing vision, but then a second later it'd be gone, and then I wouldn't have another one. So I guess I want to tell you this because if you want it bad enough and if you persist with it, if you're willing to put the time and the effort in, as with anything, you can do it. You can heal yourself, you can heal others, you can connect with energy, you can connect with spirits. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day where I'll be sitting here saying, or I, communicate with ghosts all the time. That's just a normal part of my day. I never thought I would be one of those people who was able to do that. But I can, and I honestly think everyone is different, but everyone has the ability to do this if you really, really want it. So I just wanted to share a little part of my journal. It's dated March 2015. So this is one of the first Reiki healings I did on myself. So I'll read it to you. I decided to do a Reiki healing on myself today. Thanks, Pinterest, for giving me some diagrams. I can't read my writing. I printed 2 diagrams, how to cleanse all the chakras and how to do a self-Reiki healing. So even though I'd done the training, I had this big manual of notes and things. The teacher spent, hours with me, teaching me bits and pieces. I still felt like I was in unknown territory and I had no idea what I was doing. So, as I said here, I turned to the internet. I went on Pinterest and found some really cool charts and diagrams. So, if you've already done your training, or if you would like to do your training, and it doesn't have to be Reiki either, it can just be intuitive energy healing. It doesn't have to be specific to Reiki. Get on the internet and do a bit of a search and find something that jumps out at you. I found the charts and the diagrams really helpful. I liked to have the visual because it helped me sort of get a visual in my head of what was going on. So don't be scared to have a look online and see what you can find. Print some stuff off and just go for it. Have fun with it. So here I say I cleansed my chakras first and then I cleared my aura. These are things I was taught in the Reiki training I did. As I worked through the self-Reiki healing, I saw the following things. Behind my closed eyes, I saw my star, which I mentioned in the book. So I talked about my star, which is what I named my business after. This star I see often, even now in healings. So I saw my star only once, but yay. I saw a tiger, I saw eyes, I saw hands in prayer, I saw a donkey or a camel, couldn't quite make it out. I also started to see my third opening. A beautiful white light started to radiate. It started out really small and grew bigger and then closed again, and it did this a couple of times. That was just the most amazing experience, and I want to see and feel more. Practice and my abilities will strengthen. This is my goal for now. I feel great, Joe. So that was one of the first healings I did for myself, and it was like this. It was almost like a little taster, like, this is what's waiting for you. So just keep going with it. So I persisted with it. And so now I want to show you just one other thing out of here, if I can find it. So only a couple of weeks later, I've journaled April 2015. And I've written here, so we'd gone away camping, our whole family had gone away camping, and we camped on a private property, and it was by this beautiful river. We had mountains right there. It was just the most beautiful nature landscape you could have ever asked for. And I was so excited about going there because I thought, I'm going to do healings on myself there, and it's going to be mind-blowing because I'm going to be by the river and the mountains, and it's going to be connected with nature. So I took my journal with me and I went off to the river and worked on it. We were there for probably 3 or 4 days. So this entry in April says, we are home from our camping trip and I can't help but feel disappointed. Just a little. My self-Reiki by the creek was rather non-eventful. Maybe my expectations are too high? Never mind, it was still one of the best family holidays I've ever had. So I'd gone away on this holiday with all of these expectations of it's going to be mind-blowing. And, you know, yeah, it was really beautiful sitting by the river and relaxing, but I didn't have any of those big spiritual healing moments that I was expecting. And so I wanted to share that with you. And I still have these now. Like I did a healing. I won't say I tried to. I did a healing on myself only a few days ago. And I sat and I felt into it. And I sat there for half an hour and I know I was receiving healing, but I tell you what, I saw nothing and I felt nothing. So I spent half an hour just sitting there moving my hands over my body with the intention of healing, and I didn't see or feel anything. But then I can have conversations with spirits who walk into the room, and if I put my hands on someone else, I can say, this is going on in your body and you're thinking about this. And so it changes all the time. So I really want to encourage you to don't give up and don't be too hard on yourself, because some days you'll have great success and some days you won't. So yeah, I really wanted to share that little journal with you, so hopefully that helps. I also thought, hang on, so we've got a couple of questions. So I know Cassie sent me a question earlier, like a few days ago. She asked me for more details on my self-healings that I did. So I'll talk about how I did it back then, like when I first started, because it's very different now how I do it on myself. So back then, I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't really know what I'm doing. I feel I'm more intuitive now than what I was. So because my intuition was not even there, I don't think, I had my list sitting next to me of hand positions. So I'm like, right, hands on head, hands on face, hands on chest, hands on shoulders. So there's specific Reiki positions, but again, if you haven't done any Reiki training, it's intention. You can place your hands anywhere on your body with the intention of healing. And even if you can't see it or feel it, it's happening. So I had this list sitting next to me of head, face, neck, shoulders, da, 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 going all the way down the body. And I'd have my clock sitting next to me, and I kid you not, I would sit there 5 minutes, 5 minutes on my head. Right. I look at my list, right, head, 5 minutes. And I'd watch the time, and I'd watch the time. Okay, 5 minutes is up. Face. Check my list. Yep, face. Okay, hands on my face. And I'd sit there checking the clock, 5 minutes, hold it, hold it, hold it. Right, next, shoulders, and so on for like an hour. And that was it. I couldn't feel anything. I could barely see anything. I didn't know, my hands weren't intuitively going where they wanted to go. I was just being very systematic. But I think what got me over the line was my persistence and my determination. And that's why I said to you earlier, if you want something bad enough, if you really, really want to be able to heal yourself or to connect with energy or to talk to spirits, you can do it, but you have to put the practice in. And sometimes that practice means you won't have a successful run with it, but you've got to keep going despite that. So they were my healing. So I'd lay on my bed, I'd kick all my family out, they'd have to stay in the rest of the house, and I'd shut myself in the bedroom and I'd systematically work my hands down my body. And eventually I started seeing colours and I started feeling the energy, and I started having these thoughts in my head. And it took me a long time to work out that it wasn't my imagination, it wasn't my own thoughts. So when I get spirit messages, I don't actually hear voices with my ears. It's thoughts in my mind. It's like my own thoughts. So if you sit there and you think about, if you have a conversation in your head without speaking words, so if you're sitting there with your mouth closed and in your head you're thinking to yourself, okay, I really need to get something organised for dinner tonight, and I've got this chore to do, and you've got that dialogue going on in your head. So that's what the spirit messages for me are like. It's like this internal dialogue, but it's not mine. I'm not controlling it. It just pops in, just comes through from nowhere. And so I was having this internal dialogue when I was doing my healings, and I thought to myself, far out, brain, shut up, like just stop. And sometimes it was my mind chatter, but a lot of the time it was messages coming through, but I had no idea that that's what it was, because I'd be there thinking, well, why am I thinking about feathers all of a sudden? Like, that's just stupid. Why would I be suddenly thinking about traveling here or feathers or this person or, you know, someone had just randomly popped into my head? That was all part of the healing experience. So keep that in mind too if you want to do this for yourself. Any thoughts that come through that seemingly come out of nowhere or catch you a bit off guard, 9 times out of 10, it's a spirit message. So that's how I did it for, oh God, I reckon nearly a year. That was how I did my healings on myself. And I wasn't very, once I started doing my business and started healing other people, I guess my own healings kind of went by the wayside a bit. I'd still do them, but I wasn't dedicating an hour a day or every second day to doing my own. So recently I decided it was time, with, you know, everything sort of being paused in the world for the moment. I thought, well, I'm going to start doing healings for myself again. But in my head, I had the healings that I was doing for myself 5 years ago. And so a few weeks ago, I thought, right, well, I'm going to do it again. So I went through the same process. Stupid me, went through the same process, thinking I was going to do the same healing technique. And I persisted with it for days, and I wasn't feeling anything and I wasn't seeing anything. And I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? This is stupid. And then spirit like boomed at me. That's not how you do it anymore. Like, and then it kind of occurred to me, okay, that was how I used to do healings for myself. That worked then. I needed that then. But that's not how I heal myself now. I know more. I'm more intuitive. I have other skills and other gifts that I can use. And so as soon as I let all that go of how I used to do it, and I just thought, right, well, I'm just going to fly with it and see what happens. And so I pulled in crystals and I lit a candle and I had this beautiful ceremony happening and I had a feather, and I just kind of rolled with it. And it just took me to a whole other level of healing. But it wasn't until I let go in my mind of what it should be and how I thought it should be. It wasn't until that it actually really started to take off. So I think there's another question here. You talked about your first experience as a child. Did you have many more experiences as a child, and did it scare you? I actually didn't have many more experiences as a child. I was terrified of the dark as a child. And now thinking back, I think it was because I was feeling, you know, when it's dark and it's quiet, and so you're more in tune, you're more connected to energetically what's going on around you. I think that was happening for me as a child, but I didn't understand it, and so it frightened me. So I remember many, many nights laying in bed, just paralysed, thinking there's someone there, there's something there. And there wasn't that I could see, but I felt it and I believed it. And so those kind of experiences as a child were, oh gosh, every night almost. But as far as any sort of real deep, obvious moments as a child, not that I can recall, I don't think I had any. What else? What else can I tell you? So I wondered if you would like an update, because part one, I have trouble keeping on track, so I've got notes here because I will just go in all directions. So part one is about my journey, my story. And so I wondered if you'd like to know a bit about me and where I'm at now with my journey. And again, because I've been jotting things down in my book, in my journal in the last couple of weeks, I thought I could tell you some things that have been happening for me personally lately. So I'm just going to have a flick through here. Oh, so one really cool thing that's been happening a lot lately. So I published my book November last year, and for the first probably couple of months, I was really promoting it heaps on social media, and I was selling copies from people having healings with me, and it was all very, what's the word? Like it was constantly on my mind. It was constantly something I was focusing on. But in the last few months, I've kind of let it slide to the back a little bit, and that was for no reason. I just focused more on, doing healings for people and other things. So the book has always been there, always available for people to buy, but I haven't actively been promoting it or doing anything with it. And I got a message in one of the healings I did for myself. I got the message that the book is going to gain momentum again soon. And I thought, oh, that's cool. So I jotted that note down. And then, I kid you not, the last week or 2 weeks, let me find my note here. Where is it? Okay, so in the last couple of weeks, I have seen the word equilibrium just appear in random places. And so equilibrium, I don't think, is a very common, well-known word. It's not the type of word people use in everyday conversations. It's not really the type of word that I have seen pop up since I've written my book. I haven't really seen it appear anywhere. But I got that message from Spirit a week or so ago saying, your book's going to start to get tracks, make tracks, and really start to take off. I thought, cool. And since then, I've seen the word equilibrium appearing everywhere. So I saw it on a random Instagram post from someone else as I was scrolling through. They used that word, in their description of their story. In a fiction book I was reading, in a novel, and it had nothing to do with spirituality or energy. It was just a really, I guess they call it chick literature novel, easy read novel, and the word equilibrium popped up in there a couple of times. I was listening to a podcast, and she used the word equilibrium to describe something. I was watching a TV show, like an Aussie drama TV show. Again, nothing to do with spirituality or connectedness or anything. And they used that word. One of the characters in one of the episodes used the word equilibrium in conversation with another one of the characters on the TV show. And then my husband poked me the other night, we were watching TV, and he said, oh my God, did you hear that? So the word equilibrium popped up on the TV then again. And I know a lot of people think, coincidence? That's not a coincidence. Like, there's the universe sending me a message that there's energy being brought to the book for whatever reason. I still have no idea what's coming, what's going to happen, how it's going to take off. But my God, the messages are everywhere. So that was a really cool thing that I've experienced in the last couple of weeks. I'll finish a healing and then I'll walk out and look at the clock and it'll be 11:11. And I wrote here, I'd finished a healing. I've just walked out into the lounge room, looked at the clock, and the time was 3:33. And then a kookaburra flew straight towards the window that I was looking at. Flew straight towards me, and then it kind of veered off and around the house at the last minute. And so, again, people say, that's nothing, it's a coincidence. But honest to God, I feel like these are all signs, these are all messages. And I think the biggest part of it is you just have to believe. You just have to, it sounds cheesy, but you just have to have faith. And I, again, never thought I'd be one to say those words. I think it was all religious and a bit kooky, but I think having that belief and having a faith in something, in anything, it motivates you, it gives you hope, it inspires you, it drives you. It's an incredible experience. So The things I've been, oh, here's another cool thing. So where is it? So this is an interesting session. So I did a healing on myself recently, and I asked to be shown my spirit guides, which funnily enough is something I've never asked to do or felt like I needed to connect with. And I could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could feel 5 spirits around me. They told me they're the gods of the sun, moon, and sky. They told me they're my teachers. And they told me that unless the spirit, because this is something I have trouble with, I hear lots of spirits talking to me, but I don't know who they are. And so I have someone say, well, who is that? I don't know. Like, I don't know who that is. And that's been something I've struggled with for quite a long time now, is I hear the messages, but I couldn't tell you who it was giving you the message. So my teachers have said to me that unless the spirit identifies themselves going into the message, I know that it will always be my teachers talking to me. So they'll be passing me messages on from other people I'm doing healings for. They'll be giving me messages for myself, for my family, anything that's unidentified, from an unidentified spirit. I need to know that it is from one of them. They've told me that I'll be shown or taught some light codes, but not now. That'll come later. I was told to, what else did they say? I was told that it's time to commit to furthering my journey and developing my gifts. So you may notice I haven't been on Facebook much lately with my page. I'm honouring that. I'm just stepping back from being out there and doing things within the community just to focus on my own stuff. So I've been trying to honour that as much as I can, which is why I've been a bit quiet. But one of the sessions I had was amazing, and I can't, where is it? Oh, here. So one of my teachers said to me, okay, well, I'm going to teach you. He says he has the ability to change DNA molecular structure and composition, and he wants to teach me how. He was a philosopher. And so he talked me through this process of how to reset someone's DNA, and I've been using myself as a guinea pig for a few days now. And so there's specific hand placements with my fingers and my thumbs. I have to sit in certain spots, and I have to do specific things. And so he stepped me through this process of, okay, well, first, this is what you do, and this is what's happening. Second, you do this, and this is why that's happening. And then he said, okay, so you do this, and then you've received a DNA reboot, essentially. And he says to me, you may need to do it for a few days, you may just need it the once, it just depends on the different people. So the healings I'm doing on myself, they're more than healings. I'm learning, I'm receiving messages and wisdom. So it's quite profound and it's really exciting. And I think that's why I need to focus on this for a little while, so that I can learn more and open myself up more. And then once I've kind of downloaded all this information and had this amazing experience for myself, I can come back and start doing healings for other people again and share what I've learned. So it's really very exciting. Okay, I'm rambling on so much. How do you quiet your own mind chatter? Not easily. My mind still is so active. Like even this morning before I was coming on here to do this, I was sitting at the computer doing some other work, and I'd come across a bit of a hurdle, and so my mind was just constantly churning over this stuff as I was trying to problem solve, and I ended up getting so caught up in my thoughts that I'd lost sight of what I was actually doing, and I had myself so wound up about it. Honestly, this was an hour ago, this was all happening, and I got myself in a real flap over it. So how do you quiet your own mind chatter? The trickiest part is to catch it, to realize, to recognize that that's what it is. And I find as soon as I've caught myself and gone, oh, mind, just calm down, then I breathe and I'll channel energy if I need to, or I'll put some music on, or I'll do something about it. There's lots of different techniques I use to quieten my mind. Distraction is a good one, like mindfulness. So doing something that I'm doing it mindfully. So if I'm washing the dishes, I'm focusing on the feeling of the water on my hands and the bubbles, and so sort of redirecting your thoughts is something I do. Meditation, sometimes it'll be just a quick sit and breathe meditation. Sometimes I'll go deeper with it. So I have lots of different techniques and things I use to quieten my mind, and they're all really, really effective. So I think the key is to actually catch yourself in that mind chatter, to call yourself out on it when you're doing it. And I think once you've done that and you've acknowledged it for what it is, then you can stop and separate yourself from it instead of getting dragged into it, and you can do something about it. So I hope that answers your question. So was there another question? I think that was all the questions. So my story, part one, I've got sidetracked a lot. I know, I'm sorry, I do this. Part one, my story. It was all brand new to me then. I didn't even know what Reiki was when I went and did my first Reiki training. I had no idea. A friend said to me, oh, this lady's really cool, you'd probably like her. I had no idea what Reiki was or what she did. And I spoke to her on the phone for 10 minutes. And the next thing I knew, I was signed up to go and do a Reiki training with her. And so I felt like a fish out of water, but far out, it was incredible. Sometimes I think that because I didn't know much about it, that did help me. Some people will say, the more you know, the more you can do and the more successful you are with things. But the opposite does sometimes apply, and oftentimes applies as well. I think sometimes the less you know about something, the more successful you can be with it, because you don't have any preconceived ideas or notions of what it should be, what it should feel like, what it should look like. So my journey at the beginning was like I was brand new, and I still am brand new, but I'm much more intuitive, and I think that's probably the key, is to be intuitive. And the other key is that I'm surrendering more now than what I did then. I was very stubborn and determined and persistent then at the start of my journey, which was my, that was what got me through. Whereas now, I almost need to let go of that stubbornness and that determination and just surrender and just feel into it. And it's kind of scary because, you let go of things and you think, oh God, I'm letting go of this. And you're kind of just floundering, going, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to focus on? What am I going to think about? What am I going to do with my time? But I've found out that, the more I stop and just feel into things, that's when the magic happens. That's when the amazing experiences happen. So I'll wrap it up there because I'm just looking here. I've been talking for 38 minutes. My God, I'm sorry. Thank you for listening to me rattle on. If you think of any other questions about part one, send me a message and I'll just type in a reply if I can, if it's appropriate. So thank you so much for listening. So I'm really excited for part two. I think I'll break part two up though into sections. So I'll have a flick through now when I finish, and I'll work out sort of what chapters we'll be talking about next time. And if you have any questions about those chapters, send them through, and I'll see you all again at the next book club catch up. Thanks for listening. Bye.